From trafficking his employee to other men, and sharing private images without her consent, to humiliating performers, to acting like animals. These are some of the controversial actions Vince McMahon did, and this is his satisfying downfall. It frequently seems like individuals destroy their life's work because they prioritize their darkest impulses over their success. Vince McMahon was the person who took over his father's wrestling business and grew it into a massive company we recognize as WWE. A large portion of concepts, personas, stories, and famous matches can be attributed to a specific way of thinking. He was not just a boss, he also portrayed a famous villain who acted like a cruel businessman. And these are the reasons he left his job as the head of WWE, and we need to look how his career fell apart, and the signs people missed. In the past, the wrestling industry worked much like street groups. The country was split into specific zones that different organizations managed. The father of Vince McMahon owned a group in the Northeast. This area had stars like Bruno Sammartino. Other groups were in the Mid-Atlantic and the South. Wrestling was not very popular back then, and there was not much money, so owners were very protective of their zones. You only held shows in your area. A group called the National Wrestling Alliance helped keep these boundaries in place. The elder McMahon was a hard worker, who had good bonds with the other owners. Vince was fascinated by this world and wanted to lead it, but his father wanted him to have a more stable career path. In 1972, he finally had a chance to promote shows in a small town in Maine. It was a hard place to make money. He came with the idea to record matches and send those recordings to other states so people could watch on television. But while the world saw a businessman building a legacy, a much darker reality was hiding just beneath the surface. Some owners saw this way to take their audience. Over the next 10 years, he helped his father to grow the company. He brought in stars like Muhammad Ali and improved their ratings. In 1982, when his father became very ill, the situation changed. His father wanted to keep the company local, but Vince had planned for a global brand. He bought the company and began to plan to enter every other area to take their business. The growth started with Andre the Giant. He was a very large person that everyone wanted to see. While working for the father Vince, Andre would travel to different areas for a fee. Hulk Hogan was also a traveling star. When Vince took over, he stopped this. He forced people to sign deals and said they only work for his shows. This is normal now in sports like football or cage fighting, but it was seen a way to hurt the industry back then. He signed the best talent for every area, and he also bought other companies to gain control of major cities like Philadelphia and Los Angeles. While the other owners were trying to survive, Vince was busy making sure they had nowhere left to go. He paid for television slots, even if they did not make money, because they saw it as a way to promote their live shows. His shows was being seen by the whole country. He started to plan to remove all his rivals city by city. He bought local stations and replaced existing shows with his own. On the famous day 1984, he appeared on television after buying a rival company and basically showed that his group was taking over. He told the audience he would provide the best entertainment. Jim Ross, a well-known announcer from that time, mentioned he once heard other owners thinking about the ways to end the life of McMahon while they were in the public restroom. At that time, entering the territory of other owner was seen as a serious act and led to threats. It is not confirmed if they were truly serious, but the hatred of owners like Jim Crockett and Bill Watts was real because their money was being taken away. Others saw this as a natural part of business and competition. If you do not change, you will fail. By 1988, he had ruined the old system and owned the top wrestling company in the country. This made it very easy for Vince to acquire the best talent. Vince was not interested in being part of the group. He was busy making sure the group had no reason to exist. Performers who signed with WWF were restricted to working only for the events and shows he oversaw, which covered nearly every state from the area of Pennsylvania up to the region of Maine. This specific way of doing business is very common in the current era, since you do not ever see a professional football player jump from a single game in the NFL to a single game in the XFL. It is also rare to see a fighter participate in one match in the UFC, and later go to a fight in Bellator before returning to the UFC. They signed exclusive deals for a set of amount of matches. However, at that point in history, the maneuvers made by Vince were seen as many ways to wreck the entire industry. He began pulling the biggest names and most talented people from every local area into binding exclusive deals with the WWF. This roster featured legends like Andre the Giant, Hulk Hogan, Rocky Johnson, Roddy Piper, Bret Hart, Mr. T, Randy Savage, The Ultimate Warrior, and Ricky Steamboat, just to list a few. Vince established a new wrestling entity called the Atlantic and Pacific Wrestling Corporation by collaborating with Mike Lebel and the Southern California area. He later acquired the shares of Mike in 1982, which gave him total authority over the New York City, Philadelphia, and Los Angeles markets. To maintain this lead, he utilized his media ties at various stations to pay $2,500 every week for a Saturday morning window on Channel 9 in Los Angeles. McMahon did not view this as a way to make money. He saw it as a marketing cost intended to drive ticket sales for live arena shows and gate receipts. Since the brand was already reaching the entire nation on the USA Network every Monday night, the product throughout the country was already being saturated with the product. That was not enough for his ambition. He initiated a total invasion plan to dismantle his rivals city by city. This included grabbing a local station in Akron, Ohio, known as WAKR, and reached the Cleveland market in early 1983. Later that year, the WWF launched on a Cincinnati channel known as WCPO, which was previously a stronghold for Georgia's Championship Wrestling. After that, he moved into World Championship Wrestling, territory in Dayton, Ohio, securing exclusive rights to push out their broadcast and replace it with his own. One by one, Vince would enter a city managed by another owner and purchase their television slot to show his own matches. If buying the airtime failed, he simply bought their most popular performers. Frequently, he did both of those things. On a notorious date known as Black Saturday, July 14, 1984, McMahon showed up in the TBS Saturday slot that had been home for Georgia's promotion for over a decade. He appeared on camera after buying the time to essentially brag about the World Wrestling Federation taking control of the time. He expressed his excitement about being on the network and promised the highest quality of professional sports entertainment. Jim Ross, the legendary voice of the company, once claimed he heard various promoters from Rival Alliance discussing a plot to end McMahon's life while they are in the public restroom stall. Back in those days, moving into territory lines was treated as a declaration of war. While it is hard to know if those threats were genuine or just an angry talk, the bitterness from men like Jim Crockett and Bill Watts was undeniable because they hated him from taking their money. Still, many viewed it as raw capitalism. In American business world, you cannot stay stagnant or someone will take your place. If you do not change, you fail. By 1988, Vince McMahon have completely broken the old regional system. Now, the WWF stood alone as a premier national powerhouse in the sport. This made it effortless for Vince to collect the greatest talent throughout the 1990s, as the organization became the home for the legends like The Undertaker, Shawn Michaels, Stone Cold Steve Austin, The Hardys, Triple H, Mick Foley, and The Rock. It seemed his only rivals was his own past success. Stadiums were packed. National broadcasts were weekly stable. With that level of dominance, the drive to remain at the top was relentless. The spectacles had to be grander and the danger were more real. Vince introduced various gimmick matches like ladder and table matches, along with more bizarre concepts like casket or dumpster matches, where you had to trap your foe in the box or trash can. There were even strange bouts in mud with animals or boiler rooms. The most intense of all was the Hell in a Cell, a massive steel cage designed for wrestlers to be tossed from top or through the mesh. Even the outcomes were scripted. These men were risking their physical health for the sake of entertainment and profit. It was inevitable for the major stunt would end poorly. In 1999, during the Kansas City did, Owen Hart, dressed as the Blue Blazer, fell 90 feet during the failed entrance. He passed away from internal injuries right there in the stadium. Despite of the announce of his death to the audience, Vince ordered the event to continue as if nothing had happened. He stood by this decision in 2001 magazine interview, stating he felt that is what Hart would have wanted. This reinforced that ruthless boss persona was not just for TV, it was his actual identity. This mindset fueled massive success with ratings reaching their peak in the late 90s. By the early 2000s, the organization was bringing in over $500 million every year. The high energy of matches did not stop. The action in the ring did not end. However, the final years of the 90s and start of the new millennium brought a move to more complex plotlines. This brings us to the famous era of grit. This time is known as the most cold, messy, extreme, and sharp period in the company's history. Plans were swapped the day prior, the day off, or even during the show. The performers were tough, mean, and aggressive. Vince was right in the middle of these plots. What is more rebellious than fighting against your boss? Vince played a crazy, power-starving, yet also somewhat sad leader of the group. His feud with Steve Austin started in 1997, after Austin attacked his boss with his stunner, sent the viewership's numbers to new heights. This conflict was massive. Austin once held McMahon with a weapon in the ring, even though it was fake. He drove a truck to the ring and soaked Vince with the hose full of drinks. He even broke into the medical room where Vince was resting to beat him while he was in the bed. This ended with Austin having a full match against Vince and his son Shane. This plot made it clear that Vince have tied the fiction was a smart move for the business. Still, Stone Cold Steve Austin has a huge name. He could fight with an object it would be fun to watch. In this edgy time, you could no longer just be a physical person to be a top name. You needed to have big persona, charm, and great talking skills to sell struggle and keep the fans watching. If you lacked those, the people in the back would still make a plot for you. Oh, you would not believe terrible and sick stories that Vince said yes to or made up on his own. In a very strange plot, a character named Kane said that he was out late with a girl he loved since his youth. He could not use the car right, and they had not wrecked where she died. After that, Kane goes to her funeral for 6 minutes on live TV. He touches her fake body, removed her clothes and act intimate with her. He even grabs her fake parts and drinks her fake blood. He says he will take what he always wanted. Or look at the time when Chris Jericho trapped a female wrestler and started to hurt her with metal tool. This actually caused her real pain because her bone broke. Her cries were not an act. Vince loved making people feel low. He made a club where several men had to get their knees and kiss his backside in front of a giant crowd. Mostly this was to keep his job or just to show off his control. I should also point out that Vince let himself be made look silly. He wrote scenes where his face was pushing the backsides of other large wrestlers. Now most people just think all of these is just for fun. They feel like it is fine because it is scripted. But as time went by, the people spoke about what happened when the cameras were off, and Vince was blamed for sexual harm and selling women. Some of these plots felt more like peek into how Vince really lived his life. Vince frequently used his daughter for these dark plots. This was likely because her bond with him meant she would never tell him no. For example, she was going to wed her partner with a ring. Triple H stopped the event with a clip of himself giving her drugs, taking her away, and then being with her while she was out of it. This led to a famous speech where she called him a predator, but his daughter was also taken in another story by a dark character who brought her out on the wooden cross. Following that, one of his workers started a wedding while she was tied up. Fans now think this was a way for him to admit what was happening to her. She says that Vince sold his own daughter like a property. She also stated that he tried to make a story where he would be the father of her child. This was the only time she actually told him no. That idea was just too gross. It was disgusting and had no value for the fans. But that did not stop from her kissing him on the lips later. Vince just would not stop making stories that showed men attacking women. He made a plot where a man followed the wife of Undertaker. The man who did it says the day that he's sorry to agree to be part of that story. He should have just said no. Years later, this is what Vince said he was going to do to the family of Undertaker. He said people would set the house on fire and the kids would be taken away. He said the wife would be harmed by the group of bikers right in front of him. That was a plan he wanted to use. Finally, Vince was able to find a woman who could help him to take his bad ideas to the new level. He wrote a story for himself, a secret partner named Trish. She played a person who was with the boss to get a better spot in the group. At one point, they even wrote the real wife of Vince was so sick she needed help all day and was on many drugs. After that, he brought her out in front of everyone to kiss Trish right in front of his spouse. McMahon acted with cruelty regarding his spouse, creating a segment where his children repeatedly struck their mother to assist a promotion. High viewership was the goal above all else. Though Trish put an effort to climb the corporate ladder, she soon faced embarrassment. He forced her to undress and act like a canine in front of the audience. He attempted to force her into his special club, but The Rock stepped in to stop it. The vision of McMahon for treating women better involved a new type of bout called the undergarment match. In this contest, female performers won only if they removed the clothing of their rivals. There were also contests involving water and physical discipline. He frequently scripted stories where women provide him with intimate favors. Tori Wilson recently explained how she never desired a provocative role and tried to talk the staff into letting her perform her real athletic feats. A trainer named Fit Finlay helped with the matches, and she would ask to be tossed into real steps. She genuinely wanted to prove her toughness. She desired more than a physical work, but the response was often laughter. Being pressured into these vulgar scenes and segments and only highlighted her body caused her to dislike the industry long after her retirement. There's a specific shadow over the sport that she finds difficult to handle. She avoids many appearances now because the heavy feeling persists. It has taken many years to find peace. She avoided the sport for a long time because the trauma of being exposed in the role that did not reflect her true self. While observers assumed these vulgar matches and scripts were just better numbers, the reality behind the curtain was much grimmer. This environment was so damaging to Ashley Massaro that it resulted in the end of her life. She first joined the organization in 2005 after meeting a scout at the modeling event. She won a large payment of $250,000 in a one-year deal. Her early days were filled with difficulty. In August 2005, she jumped in the back of the performers like Candice Michelle and Tori Wilson. She left her with a spinal injury. Even with that pain, she recovered and won the first group undergarment match. Following this, she stayed in the industry but suffered a major leg break in February 2008 during the Battle Royal against Mickie James. The damage involved the broken spine and shattered bones was required surgery and metal hardware. After healing, she came back briefly but left in 2008 because of her child's health issues. She remained out of the public eye until 2016. At that time, she joined a legal fight claiming the boss helped hide the terrible event. Ashley was a dedicated friend of the military and enjoyed meeting with the soldiers. In 2006, she was thrilled to visit Kuwait. However, their journey began with trouble in Saudi Arabia. She felt unsafe because of how several men treated her. Upon reaching Kuwait, She had medical issues and went to the base for care. She was given a medical drip. Later, a person wearing an orange shirt and a cargo pants, claiming to be a medic, gave her an injection that made her unable to move while she remained awake. He moved her to a separate room where he committed a horrific act of violence while the female accomplice watched the entrance. After she got back to the States, a doctor of a company named Dr. Rios held a meeting with her. She was confused about how he knew, but she shared the details as long as it stayed private. The doctor informed McMahon instead. The boss later brought in leaders for a meeting where Masaru was required to explain what took place in Kuwait. She mentioned Vince gave a small apology for her trauma, but later insisted if she spoke about it, he said it would damage the bond between the group of the US military forces. He urged her to avoid letting a single negative event spoil the great things they were achieving. His cold words describe her pain, as just one negative event made her unable to speak. In a legal paper the next month, a group labeled her story an old fake claim and said she never told any person. They claimed she was caught telling people that the medic simply performed a bad pelvic exam instead, before the legal authority threw out the case in 2018. Under a year later, she sent messages back to her followers who giving her care and praise for her courage. Following that, the upcoming morning, she sadly lost her life on May 16, 2019, at the age of 39, leaving behind her child. A vital account she provided for her legal battle was hidden from the world until 2024. To support the fresh claims against Vince made by Janelle Grant, whom we will discuss shortly, her words explain that during her years in the company, she witnessed a boss being intimate with other performers in the backstage. She thought she had no interest in her and felt she was not his preference. This changed once her magazine feature came out. She was given the chance to travel on the corporate aircraft and use the same housing as the leaders for a while. On one such night, he tried to isolate her in a private room inside his own private space. While the hours were late at night, in a dwelling area, she felt extremely uneasy. He started ringing her room line and her mobile device over and over. She reached out the other lead producer to describe the events, and he suggested she inform the boss she was unwell and would meet him at the show later. She followed that advice right after that evening. He took over crafting her speeches. He does not usually craft speeches for the ladies. That task belonged to the writing staff, and he would never, in any regular common workday setup situation, have done so. But he did, and the words were crafted with the specific goal of destroying her work life. Furthermore, after that evening, every time she was near him, he would say crude and sexual things that were meant to make her feel bad. These stories are supported by her ex-partner and athlete, Paul London, who mentioned the boss was always forcing her into scary situations. Many days she was weeping in front of him because the leader was asking her to travel in a private company along with him. A producer would inform her that she was required to be on that flight with the boss or something similar. Every so often while she was staying at the lodging for the show, the leader would be at her door requesting that she let him inside. It was surprising that these stories about him are only reaching the public ear now. The space around him was becoming smaller as the truth began to emerge. He managed to avoid the terrible accusations made by the performer who passed away, but his time was short, as the truth always finds a way. Terrible claims were made, but it was strictly a question of days before his bad past would catch up with him. In 2022, the leader decided to provide more than $12 million to 4 ladies who were linked with the group over the period of 16 years. Stories say these women also agreed to contracts that stopped them from talking about their interactions with the boss. The payments involved a $7.5 million deal for an athlete who claimed the leader forced her into sexual act and later lowered her status as a worker in 2005. Following her refusal of meetings, this issue was plenty to force the boss to at least leave his job as the head of the group. But in early 2024, he was faced with new legal battle filled with proof that would let the entire public see what exactly who he really is. A former worker named Janelle Grant blamed him for harming and using her for his own gain during his time as a leader. She claimed he tricked her with better pay. Afterward, he used and traded her various males inside the business. Grant initially encountered McMahon in March of 2019 via a supervisor in her residential complex where McMahon also resided. She was looking for work following her parents' passing. McMahon vowed her a position at WWE and gave her many presents. But the sessions became wrong when one day McMahon came to her in his undergarments and forced her into erotic acts. As such, when McMahon urged Ms. Grant for a bodily bond for a long-vowed work at WWE, she felt stuck in a hopeless spot. She felt forced into yielding to McMahon's carnal needs or meeting failure. Ms. Grant worried that she had total things to lose and would meet bad results no matter what occurred. In June of 2019, Grant started acting as an office organizer in WWE's Law Group. After granting her post, Vince McMahon's erotic request grew. He started sending graphic images and clips of her various WWE workers and bosses. Despite her signs of sadness and efforts to stop the intimate bond, she came to realize that McMahon wanted a bodily connection to carry on a piece of her work. In March of 2020, McMahon started showing graphic pictures and films of Ms. Grant, including adult media he made with other males both in and out of the firm. You can even view this in phone notes of him saying he did this. She even tried to say that she did not wish a partner named Johnny or John Laurinaitis to receive pictures of her. The legal case later moves on to explain not one or a couple, but endless very specific moments in which Vince used his clout to ruin her. He used her bodily task and pushed her hand herself to him and his friends. This happened whether it was by helping bosses during work times and rooms or helping WWE athletes to keep them happy and stop them from quitting the firm. This power can only be called intimate bondage. If you view this phone note, you can see the sample of him trying to arrange a plan for his friends to take cycles with this female. She responded that she does not wish to, but he stayed pleading. Many other digital notes from Vince were viewed in case where he fully tells his wish to trade her to males through the sector, as one sample of McMahon's total filth. On May 9, 2020, he used waste on Ms. Grant and ordered her to stay satisfying his body. The waste was in her locks and sliding down her spine. McMahon and his body really restarted the act, which went past an hour and half a while. Ms. Grant stayed coated in McMahon's grime. Usually when folks hear about claims like this, they often think about the other side. They wonder if she desired this or enjoyed this, or is she just only using him for a check? Maybe at the start she did agree to these odd tastes, but it's quite simple to see how these events can get out of hand. A distinct boundary between what is imagined and what is real must be established, and it is obvious that did not happen here. People will also ask how things reach such a low point. Many folks underestimate the effect of mental control and how individuals can lose their identity, feel nothing, and simply begin following the orders of the predator. The legal case also mentions Vince sending her a note saying he wants to push her deeper and deeper until she asks him to trade her. In early 2022, Vince said his spouse discovered a bond with Janelle and said she wanted a split. He ended all talk with her to protect his home and avoid mess. He required her to put her name on the pad, where McMahon promised her $3 million to keep their bond secret. Following the hidden note in 2022 that started a group check and money gift to some ladies, Vince ceased giving Janelle funds after the first $1 million part. Vince has strongly said he did no wrong. He also gave out a message stating he and Janelle were in a willing bond that went on a nearly 3 years and finished in early 2022. He also noted that Grant sent him graphic photos of herself and notes saying she loved him, while asking for clothes and other presents. We are sure the proof will show the claims of Ms. Grant. He claims her case is just a made-up angry story from a sad old partner. But in July 2023, national officers took the phone of McMahon and gave him a court notice. It looks like from that time, which has been 12 months, the police have been making a file against him. Only 4 weeks ago, they asked Janelle if she would say yes to pausing her fight while they look at him more closely. She said yes. So it looks like at that any time the police could show the public years of proof showing him to be a very same sick, mean, and power-hungry person who showed himself to be on a screen for the last 35 years. It's It's a massive fall for a man who owned the industry, but let me know what you think in the comments. Do subscribe, I'll see you on the next one.